The chief rabbi of Israel makes a visit to the White House. He sees Truman and he says, Harry Truman, President, you have been put in your mother's womb for such exact time as that. He said, that's why. And he opens the book and starts reading about Cyrus to him. And Truman says, was I used by God? And he says, yes. And Truman breaks down and cries in the Oval Office. This has held up from the days of Egypt to the United States of America. Yeah. Like clockwork, our God is real. One of the things is we're living in a time when the world is trying to dismiss God and say, oh, that's old, we can move on from that. That's one of the reasons I believe this is here, because no, God, your God is in charge. The God of the Bible is alive and well.
1867, 1917, now we are up to...
Well, this is the other one from Herzl. This is the other Jubilee from Herzl, 50 years. So we're at the time of the birth of Israel, which is prophetic. Listen, Jesus cannot come again until Israel is back in the world. And the Bible said, when I was an atheist, that blew me away. That God said it, he said everything he said is coming true. That Israel's in the world, every day you've got a sign from God, that your God is real. And so here, so there's something in that door called the Day of the Scrolls. Yeah. And here it is. Whenever God does something, he does it by his word first. Before he did the universe, his word. Before Israel they came to the land, they came to Sinai, got the word. Before they came back, the word's restored. And even before Israel came in the modern times, you have the word of prophecy around for 2,000 years before it happened in our lifetime. So the word always comes from, God always restores the word linked to the restoration of Israel. So now here's the thing. A little shepherd boy or a shepherd boy is following his goat. He ends up going into a cave, throws a rock in the cave, crashes pottery, looks in there. He finds these ancient scrolls that he brings the scrolls, brings it to a shop. And now what is this? This is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls has the Bible in it. It's the oldest Bible in the world.
This is 1947.
This is 1947, which is crucial. Why? Yep. It just happens after 2,000 years. Why? Because Israel's coming back the next year. Yeah. The Word and then the nation. So he restores the word. And this is something, people said, oh, the Bible was written late. Well, it went from the Middle Ages, that was the oldest, to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So God is upholding his word. And particularly the book of Isaiah, which is filled with prophecies about Israel coming back into the world. Yeah. But here's the thing. This one guy gets it. They give the scroll to this one guy who's a professor in Jerusalem named Eliezer Sukenik. He gets it and he starts opening up the scrolls on one. He brings it back to his apartment, opens up, and he can't believe what he's seeing. It's blowing him away. He never saw anything like it. He's opening it up and it's being revealed for the first time after 2,000 years. That same night, his son is running into his room, giving him news of something, giving reports from the radio, because the night that the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Word of God, was now here restored, Isaiah, all that, on that same night, Israel was voted back into the world.
Wow.
Only God.
Only God. You mentioned the little boy and the oracle. It is fiction, quote unquote.
Well, it's framed in that.
It's framed
just like the Harbinger.
Like the Harbinger.
Yeah, but
it'd be very familiar to people in a great way, because
you're on an adventure.
You're on an adventure. That's how I felt. Just the settings. We're in the desert. We're in a cave. We're at an oasis with the oracle. This mysterious, divinely inspired figure. Very cool stuff, my friend.
Yeah, that's the way, because when I did the Harbinger, when I first wrote the Harbinger, I wrote it completely nonfiction.
Yeah.
And the Lord just said, okay, you finished, now rewrite the whole thing. Yeah. Because God uses parables and he uses pictures and images to reach more people. So the delivery system is that, but it's filled with, everything it's filled with is real.
Yes.
And now even America, we've all grown up, many of us grown up in America. We've been blessed to live in America, the head nation in the world with power and all. Well, even America and its rise is part of the mystery. Because if you look at it, you had the Ottoman Empire, had the land, but they're against God's purposes here. Sure. So God says, okay, you're coming down. Yeah. So they come down. And then Britain says, we're going to be for this, and the Jewish people are going to come back. God lifts them up to the pinnacle of their power, the British Empire. Mm-hmm. Then, in between the two wars, England turns against this, and all of a sudden, overnight, the British Empire collapses. Right. So God has to have another power to raise up. That is the United States of America. So America rises up just at the moment that Israel needs it. God, even our nation is part of the mystery. Everything we've experienced is part of the mystery of God.
For New York City, where we're sitting right now, that's good news, right?
Yeah. Okay. That we keep blessing Israel.
Yes. And to New York, where we're at right now, and around the world, this really lines up, I think, Jonathan, when I was reading. Genesis 12:3.
Yeah.
I will bless those who bless you. God says to Abraham, I will curse those who curse you.
Yeah.
In real time.
In real time.
God keeps his promises.
Yes. That's true as a nation, and that's true individually. You bless Israel. I've never met anybody who blessed Israel and wasn't blessed.
No.
I never met anybody who hated the Jewish people and wasn't cursed.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And this has held up from the days of Egypt to the United States of America like clockwork.
Yeah.
Our God is real. One of the things is we're living in a time when the world is trying to dismiss God and say, oh, that's old. We can move on from that. That's one of the reasons I believe this is here, because God, your God is in charge. The God of the Bible is alive and well, and He's in charge of everything.
That's right. Amen.
That's what I believe you are for. Even presidents,
even American presidents who played a crucial role in the rebirth of Israel, a prophetic role. Tell us about it.
When God, even that, when the Jewish people came back the first time, God had a world ruler, Cyrus, to bless them, to say, go back, to actually bless Jerusalem and come back and rebuild. Cyrus.
The mighty Persian Empire.
He let them go home from Babylon, from their captivity. Well, when God brought them the second time, which was in our time, which was even bigger, I mean, it's the whole world. Did he have a world leader? Well, he did. An unlikely man, a guy who you never expect, but all of a sudden, God raises him from almost nothing and makes him the most powerful man in the world, and his name is Harry S. Truman. And Harry Truman read the Bible several times as a youth. And his best friend was a Jewish man, which God would use years later for Israel to come back into the world.
Jacobson.
And Harry Truman had a love for Israel, and he actually defended Israel. Well, if FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, had remained in power, it's most likely Israel would not have come back into existence. So Roosevelt, in his last election, decides to lift up this guy, Harry Truman.
Yeah.
Less than 90 days after Truman is sworn in, Roosevelt dies, and Truman becomes the most powerful man in the world. And now Truman is going to follow the mystery of Cyrus.
Yeah.
He's the first one. Follow the mystery of Cyrus. In fact, first of all, he's going to recognize Israel. He's going to return. He is instrumental in the UN voting Israel back, just like Cyrus was instrumental.
We were the first nation, by the way, if you're in the United States, to recognize the state of Israel, the modern state of Israel.
11 minutes after it was declared.
1948, May 14th.
Yeah. So
I will bless those who bless you. Hello.
And when did America become a superpower? At that same moment. So that all happens. And now Truman, not only that, people don't realize, Truman actually first sent the word to the British Empire, let those exiles go back to the land, just like Cyrus did. Yeah. He said, you let them back. And I looked at the day that he said it was a Sabbath, was a Friday. And it was an appointed word. And that begins the return. And the appointed word was Moses telling Israel, the first prophecy, in that day, God will gather you back from all the nations and bring you back to the land. On the exact day. And not only that, after Truman recognized Israel, the chief rabbi, Cyrus, he didn't know what he was doing. He just was doing, and God says,
not a believer.
I'm using you anyway. And then, but Isaiah says, no, Cyrus, God is the one in charge of you. So Truman also had a Cyrus, had like an Isaiah in a sense. The chief rabbi of Israel makes a visit to the White House. He sees Truman and he says, Harry Truman, President, you have been put in your mother's womb for such exact time as that. Wow. He said, that's why. And he opens the book and starts reading about Cyrus to him. And Truman says, was I used by God? And he says, yes. And Truman breaks down and cries in the Oval Office.
And he says?
Well, a little while later. Now he's jumping the gun. He's like, no.
It's too good. I can't keep it all in.
Cyrus would sign his inscriptions saying, I am Cyrus. You can find it, I am Cyrus. Years later, Truman says these words, I am Cyrus. And one of the mysteries here is that when God does like one Jubilee, he prepares the next one and plants the seed. So when he does one, so he's got one Cyrus. In the reign of Harry Truman, that Cyrus, the first American Cyrus, is born a child, Donald Trump, the next Cyrus. Born in the time of Truman. That's going to be another mystery.
That's called a teaser in TV, folks. Wow. And folks, we prayed before that this book is going to shake the nations. I believe it's going to have that kind of impact. Okay.
So now, all right. So now if you go back to the main Jubilee, that keeps going. We had 1867, 50th year, 1917, Restoration. Count Count 50 years. See, every time there's going to be a restoration of what was lost. That's Jubilee. You shall go home. Everyone shall return. So count 50 years from 1917. It takes you to the year 1967. Anything significant happen that year? Well, remember when Jesus said, I'm not coming back until the Jewish people say, Baruch haba, blessed is he, in Jerusalem. So they need Jerusalem. And so, but they didn't have Jerusalem when they came back. But God says, I don't care what the UN says. I don't care what the world says. If I said it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So, amazing thing, it all's going to happen, and that year is going to be the year. Israel didn't ask for it, actually. It just came upon them, and Israel enters that year. Jewish soldiers, after 2,000 years, enter the gates of Jerusalem. For everyone shall return home. The owner shall return home.
The Six-Day War.
Six-Day War comes upon them. And how does it happen? It happens because the Soviet Union, the godless, anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-Jesus Soviet Union, sends a word to the Arab nations false that Israel's going to attack you. That causes the Arab nations to line up to destroy Israel. That brings about the Six-Day War. That brings about Jerusalem. So the Soviet Union brought about biblical prophecy.
Wow.
And that tells you something. Yeah. If God can use the Soviet Union, he can use any problem in your life to accomplish his will in your life. And so, but amazing, in the Bible, a lot of times God gives prophetic songs. That a song of prophecy is given, and then it comes true. You see it in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Well, amazing thing. On the 19th anniversary of Israel, they're having a celebration. And a woman sings a song to the nation. And it spreads throughout Israel, and it's a song of prophecy. The song is called Jerusalem of Gold.
Love it.
And all of a sudden, Israel is longing for Jerusalem all over. They're all singing it, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. On the night that she introduced the song, the Egyptian soldiers are lining up on the borders of Israel to invade. And it's going to bring about the Six-Day War. So it's all going to come to pass as from the song. And by the end of that, on the end of that war, she has to change the end of the song because it was a song of mourning. But now at the end it becomes a song of rejoicing. Well, remember, God said to Israel when they lost Jerusalem, he said, judgment comes, I'm going to turn your rejoicing into mourning. Yes. But then he says, redemption, I will turn your mourning into joy. Yes. So that's exactly what he did.
Right.
But Israel didn't know, when this was all happening, Israel thought it was going to be destroyed. They start preparing coffins. They start dedicating the parkland for cemeteries.
Digging graves. There's footage of this in old pictures from 1967.
They're actually doing that, but they have no idea that God is at work. And same with our lives. You have no idea, but God is at work. Right. And the thing is that, so they have a secret meeting of the president, the prime minister, and the military men said, what do we do? And they make the decision. He says, if we don't go to war now, we're going to be destroyed. So they make the decision on this day, but that day is the Sabbath.
Again.
So that means there's an appointed word. The appointed word for that day has the words, go to war.
Wow.
It's the time in the Torah where God tells Israel how to prepare for war and to mobilize all the men. That's what they were doing. And they mobilized all the men up to the age of 50, Jubilee. So they had to be born since the last Jubilee. And at the end of the war, the scripture speaks about getting all the men up to the age of 50. The actual thing. God does it. And there's something amazing called the Masada mystery.
Masada. One of my favorite places in Israel. When you visit, not if you visit Israel, when you visit Israel, you must go to Masada.
Masada is the last stand of ancient Israel. It's where they died. Yeah. Jerusalem fell, then Masada fell, and that was the grave. But there, for 2,000 years, there was a mystery hidden on that mountain. God put a parchment there with a prophecy. And it took 2,000 years for the Jewish people to get back and open it up and be blown away by the prophecy. Now, I can't get into everything, okay? Because I'm doing this on the other show. But let me get into a really amazing thing from Masada.
We won't tell anybody.
No, of course not.
Just millions of people around the world. We promise we'll
keep it a secret. Okay. So the thing is that when in ancient times, Israel lost Jerusalem, Messiah, Jesus prophesied it, and then a few years later they lost Masada. Well, if God's reversing this redemption, could this reverse? That means when Israel returns to Masada to uncover it, that means soon after that they will return to Jerusalem. Well, the amazing thing, I said, let me look at the exact date when Israel returned to Masada, when they lost Masada in Asia, when they lost Jerusalem, and take the exact amount of days between that and put it back from when they returned to Masada, it's 1,333 days. When you take it back, it comes out to the date of 1967, June 7th, the very day Israel opens the gates of Jerusalem. 6-day war, the exact date.
Wow.
The Jubilean people, I'll just mention, I mentioned that there was
was my next question.
Now let me show you, I'll show you. I told you they all began in 1867. There was this kind of mystery gathering of Jewish believers. The man who called that gathering, who called it all together, was born in 1817. He was 50 years old, and then he has the gathering. He's the first one.
Wow.
In that year, 1867, another man is born, another child is born, and when he turns 50, he will play a central role in the next Jubilee. For 2,000 years, there hasn't been Jewish soldiers in Israel. This man is going to lead the first Jewish soldiers back to the land in the year of Jubilee, and he's an Irish Christian. And his name is John Patterson. He actually becomes, he was born in that Jubilee. He plays it in that one, and he actually becomes the godfather of the Israeli army because of him. And before he dies in 1947, as Israel is going to come back, before he blesses a Jewish family. And that family is the Netanyahu family.
Wow.
Before he died. And there's so much more, and then, in 1917, another child is born in that Jubilee who's going to become a rabbi, Shlomo Goren, and he's going to be the one to sound the shofar, the trumpet, in Jerusalem on the day of Jerusalem in that Jubilee when he's 50 years old. Now, there's another person who was born in 1907, but I cannot divulge it until I talk to that person. But very crucial in this, but it goes all the way up to now.
Yeah, and the 6-day war, Jonathan, the way it unfolded, and you unfold it beautifully in the book, the 6-day war, to me, was proof of God's hand on Israel.
Yes.
All the cards, all the odds were stacked against them.
Oh, yeah.
And to retake Jerusalem, they didn't expect to retake Jerusalem in that war.
They told the people, actually, they said, stay away from Jerusalem. They were afraid of the world with that. They said, but God just forced it. God is going to do it. And notice, every Jubilee is leading up to something. It keeps on building and growing and going to the next one. So, and this is actually going to lead to the next, there's many more mysteries of but this is going to lead to the next door, which is going to take it right up to where we are right now. The mystery of the Jubilee really is the secret really of the end times. Right. Because what is the mystery? It's that everyone shall return to where you left. So it's return. Yeah. So that the mystery of the end times is return. One is that everything has to go back to where it was at the beginning of the age. So you got the Jewish people were in Israel, they got to go back to Israel. They were in Jerusalem, they got to go back to Jerusalem. But the mystery even gets bigger, because the whole world is going to follow this mystery of Jubilees. The whole world, because this is called the Dark Jubilee in the book, in the Oracle. And that is the world 2,000 years ago, at this time when the Jews were in Israel, wasn't Christian, it was pagan, it was unchristian, anti-Christian. Rome, it was pagan. Yeah. That means the world in the end is going to return to its anti-Christian state. It's unchristian, it's pagan state. Not everybody, but the mainstream culture. And so what are we watching every single day? It's the mystery of this return. Every day that the world throws off another thing and say, I don't want, and we're saying, what's going on? It's the return. Everything is being set in motion. It's going to be a rematch at the end, but the good news on that, there's another return in the book that I have to say, because where was the church 2,000 years ago? It was in Jerusalem. It was the book of Acts. It wasn't established, it wasn't comfortable, it wasn't rich. It was radical, revolutionary, filled with the Spirit, and world-changing and history-changing.
That's right.
And what that means is, though we see a great falling away, it means that in the end, God is calling the church to go back home to its original state, which is radical, revolutionary, world-changing, Spirit-filled, and unafraid, bold, uncompromised. So even though we're seeing all this and we're seeing people fall away and all that, those who stand will be transformed into what they were, the apostles and the disciples. Yeah. That's why Jewish believers are back, because that's what it was at the beginning. Yeah. The church and Israel were together at the beginning. They haven't been together until now. So it's all coming back. So that's a call for all of us to rise to that calling. So, and even when persecution comes, listen, it was that way back then. Right. That will help mold us to become the apostles, disciples of God we are called to become.
Yeah, wow. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Yes.
We live in perilous times, but we live in Bible times.
Yes.
today.
Yes.
And
yes.
so encouraging.
People are praying, I say this all the time. People are always praying, Lord, and many you.
Yeah.
I wish I lived in Bible times. Congratulations, you've arrived. You're right. Now, again, we're only given we're touching doorknobs here of the doors, but I got to do this because it ultimately is about each of us. Yeah. This mystery is about each of us. Because what's the mystery? It's about coming home. Our whole, in this world, we're never at home. And the older you live, the less you're at home, which is weird because we're not home. But what is salvation? Listen, what is the Jubilee? It begins where you're leaving a land, you're leaving a place that you had. Well, look at the beginning of the Bible. We left our home. We left our time with God. We left our place. And so what is salvation? It's Jubilee. It's coming home. It's returning home. Jesus is our Jubilee. And it's returning home. So he's calling. So our whole salvation is Jubilee. Our whole, he's calling you to become what you were meant to become from the beginning. Restoration, coming home, all that. And that's why I put in the book, it gets very personal at the end, but also that God wants us to live the power of the Jubilee. If we're seeing God, we're seeing all these things so real, so God of Israel, that means he's your God too, so he's just as real for your life. And if he doesn't forget his promise to Israel, he's not going to forget his promise to you. Yes. And if he's going to, so in the same way, if he's going to restore Israel, he's going to restore you. Yeah. Okay, and what is this all leading up to? Missing piece. Listen, this all began when, it wasn't when just Israel left the land, someone else left the land. Messiah did. The ultimate Jubilee is the king was separated from his kingdom. But the return is saying that the king is coming back to his kingdom. He's returning again, and we need to be ready. And I will just say, and I could just touch on it, but there is a seventh door. The seventh door is a mystery. Okay, if you do it. But I will say this. When you read the end of the Bible, what do you read? The tree of life was gone, now it comes back. Everything was gone comes back. It's coming home. What is heaven? It's just like Israel came to Jerusalem, we're coming to Jerusalem. Yeah. And that is the final home. When we come, heaven is the final mystery. That's our ancestral land. That's where we belong. That's where God is calling us. When we get to heaven, we're going to say, we're home for the first time. Yeah. That's what it's all about. And it goes on forever and ever and ever. He's going to restore, wipe away every tear from our eyes, and no more death, no more pain, no more mourning. That is the ultimate restoration. It says, and then he will be ours and we'll be his. That's our possession. God is our possession and we are his. Wow. That's how it goes on forever and ever and ever.
Folks, the book is called The Oracle, the Jubilean Mysteries Revealed. It's going to reach secular folks as well, I think.
Pray that, yeah.
I really
pray
do.
That's my hope, because if you're not a believer, I try to write it that, listen, a lot of people, they just don't know. They hear, so they don't realize the God that they heard about 2,000 years ago is alive and affecting their life. Whoever you are, it doesn't matter. He's in charge of everything.
To the day.
To the election.
To your birthday. To your election.
People are born just for, at exact times, and so are we, each of us. So are we as well. We were born for this age. Yes. And this is an exciting time. It's challenging. Yes. But it could also be the greatest time because God is alive and well. And to stand with him in these times is worth more than when he's popular. That's right. This is the time where he's going to anoint. The eyes of the Lord are searching the entire earth, looking for the one whose heart is completely his. He's going to raise you up. You be that one. He will raise you up. He will anoint you. He is alive now. And we need to pray for revival because we need to pray for revival. We need revival in America, revival in the world, because if there's not revival, America is down. Right. We need to pray for that, and there can be, but the revival starts with us.
Yeah.
But feelings, there are people who feel it's love, and it's actually adultery. People who commit adultery, often it's not just a carnal thing. Often it's they're falling in love, and they think it's love and loving, and it's actually destruction. Because their sin is against the marriage and family. I've known people who got caught up in that. And if you're in ministry long enough, it happens. You find people who are even who profess to believe, and they get involved in an adulterous relationship because it feels good, and they say, oh, but this one is so loving and understands me, not like my wife, not like this. Evil can feel good, and good can feel bad. To choose love may mean going against all the feelings you have and all the warm feelings. It can mean going against all that you want, but it's good. Goodness requires sacrifice. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. It doesn't say once that you're going to feel the Lord your God with all feeling. It doesn't say that. If you're married and you're tempted, what is love? Love is saying no to that feeling. The most loving thing you can do is say no to the feeling. Love is saying no to sexual temptation. Love is saying no to anger, no to bitterness, no to holding unforgiveness. It's a choice. Love is saying, I'm not going to be selfish. He said, greater love has no one, that he lays down his life for his friend. Now, how many people wake up in the morning and say, I feel like laying down my life for that person? Most of the time you don't. You might have some nice friends, but rarely do you feel led to give up your life. But Messiah's love, that's the greatest love, he says. When he went to his death, it wasn't because he felt like it. It wasn't that he had feelings, that this is great to be whipped, to be rejected, to be pierced through, to be hung. He felt like that? He did not. We respond with feelings, and we often miss the fact. Gethsemane, some people say, well, if he was divine, why would he have said, take this away from me? That's the whole point. If he said, hey, this is going to be real easy, no problem, it wouldn't be. Or if he said, I can't wait till I get there up on the cross. That's not, it was the thing he didn't feel like, but he chose to. Not my will, but your will be done. In the same way, when it's hard to love, that's often, and you still love, that is the greatest love you're going to be doing. The times when it's hardest to love the person and you still love that person, that's the glory of love. That's the real love. That's the divine love.
We have unrighteousness ruling the culture. So now we have the Elijah paradigm, which means Elijah was radical. We have to get more radical. We have to go from cultural to prophetic, to a prophetic movement. And that's the only thing that's going to make it here. So we have to take out the grays of our life as well.
Well, when Jonathan was speaking about the need for revival, the window, here's what comes to my mind. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man or a house, it goes and it seeks rest. It wanders through dry places, but it doesn't find any rest. So I'll go back to the house from which I came. And if he comes back and he finds that it's empty and swept out, then he goes and gets seven of his buddies who are more wicked than he is, and they all move in. Why? Because I got kicked out before. We're going to make this where I'm never going to get kicked out again. Wow. So if you take that concept and attach it to couple it with what Jonathan was saying, is if we have a reprieve right now, Perry, and I believe that, I really do, well, we better make the most of it. Yes. Because if we don't, then that was taken out, for well, or held back, is coming back with a vengeance. 7 times more wicked, 7 times more powerful, with the idea we're never leaving here again. And by that, I'm thinking power, White House, Congress, the whole bit. Sure. So in tandem with that, where we come in, the revival has to start with us, okay? From the very beginning, the one who has no limits, the Creator, he's limitless in his power and his presence, his understanding and wisdom, has always chosen to work through people like you and me from the very beginning.
Why is that, Bill?
Well,
why do you think?
Well, I believe that it's because he wanted to dwell in and among men. He wanted to have that communion. He wanted to have that relationship, but he also wanted us to be the ones that advance his kingdom throughout the earth. He wanted to sow the whole field, Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the wheat and tare, with one kind of seed, that it would fill up that field, fill up the world with the sons of the kingdom. So going back to my thought here is, if he's always worked through people from the beginning, then today is no different. If the revival is going to come, if there's going to be a reason for this reprieve, if it's going to affect its intended purpose, then you and I have to be the people, we have to be the people that he works in and through to bring about his purposes. I'm of the opinion that this is our Maccabee moment. That this is the time. It is. That, the story of Hanukkah, I think you mentioned that earlier, Mark. These patterns are replaying. And so it took a group of people, a remnant of people, to say, that's enough. We've had it. Now, they took up the sword, and I'm definitely not talking about that. Right. But we do take up the sword of the Spirit. It needs to be in us. It needs to be working in us and working through us. It needs to be evident in our life. But we need to take the opinion that's enough. We're not going to be silent. We're not going to be intimidated and sit over in a corner somewhere and be quiet. No, this is the moment that we need to stand up and we need to contend for the kingdom of heaven. And if we contend for the kingdom of heaven, then how can our nation not benefit from that? So that's what I believe is happening.
Yeah, it's something that goes right with that. You know, one of the things about the end times that is the grays disappear. You know, and so so the dark thing. So the time for gray Christianity is also vanishing, and that's why we're seeing it. We're actually seeing it vanish. Mainline, all it's going. But and one of the things that the paradigm is that the answer is Elijah was part of that paradigm, and we have this Elijah paradigm now. You know, we used to have a David paradigm where righteousness, at least in name, ruled the culture. We had a Christian culture, so that's one thing. But we're not of that anymore. Right. We're now we have unrighteousness ruling the culture. So now we have the Elijah paradigm, which means Elijah was radical. We have to get more radical. We have to go from cultural to prophetic. You know, to a prophetic movement, and that's the only thing that's going to make it here. So we have to take out the grays of our life as well. But this is Elijah, and so it's time to be bold. It's time, and let the chips fall where they may. It's the end times. You know, this is where we have to be.
Restore the boundaries.